My next guest I had the privilege to sit down with is a trans, non-binary Ugandan citizen. They are also a writer and a human rights defender. And so this is the second guest that we've had so far on the show that is located in Uganda. The first guest was Ruthra from episode 47. And so within this episode, me and my guest, we talked about their work as a human rights defender. We talked about how difficult it is and unsafe in Uganda for queer and trans folks to exist. We also discussed how Western culture may or may not influence laws and things in Uganda. We talked about mental health, and we also discussed ways that they choose and how they are able to navigate Uganda being a queer person. So this is a really good episode, and it shines the light on the struggles of trans folks around the world, right? And so this is one of the episodes where the guest is not just from the United States, right? So it just shows how much work needs to be done to make this world a better place, to make this world a more accepting place. So I hope that you enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to Dem Bois Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Aaron, he, him, his, and I will be your guide throughout this journey on the show. This show is a platform where trans men of color voices will be amplified as we share our stories. Trans men of color are not monolithic. What that means is our journeys are not the same. We come from different backgrounds. We have different stories, family relations, chosen family, and most of all, we have different transition journeys. Visibility equals possibility. I like to say that all the time. We like to highlight on this show trans men of color businesses and entrepreneurs, parents, athletes, survivors, and many other issues and topics that are relatable to trans men of color in our existence. Dem Bois Podcast is not only a platform to amplify our voices, but to raise awareness and conversation around our lived experiences. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for supporting, listening, and sharing the show. Welcome to Dem Bois Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Aaron, he, him, his. My next guest is a trans, non-binary Ugandan citizen. They are a writer and a human rights defender. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Sean. My name is Wegner Wilma. I'm a transgender person, non-binary. My pronouns are they, them. Right now, as I speak, I'm in Uganda at my place.
So for folks that's listening, who's not good with geography, will you mind explaining to folks where Uganda is located?
Uganda is in the East African part of Africa. The neighboring countries are Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda. So for those that have been to those countries, usually most people call it the Pearl of Africa. So if you hear the Pearl of Africa, they're speaking about Uganda.
Why do they name it that?
Pearl of Africa is like the most fruitful land in Africa. So that is what most people call it, or the nickname they gave it, I would say. So when you say Pearl of Africa, you'll be pointing at Uganda.
Oh, nice. Beautiful. You were actually the second guest that we've had from Uganda. The first guest was Ruthra, who was in episode 47. And so that was, if for folks listening, if you haven't had the chance to listen to that episode, be sure to tune in to that one and also yours. So first, thank you for giving us that geography lesson. I know where Uganda is. Maybe one day I could be fortunate to visit.
Hopefully.
Yes, I will love a tour of your beautiful country. I want to say, how did your name choose you? How did you choose that name?
My personal name is actually my more of chosen by my parents. It's like my real names. From Western Uganda. I only drop the surname and maintain the two other names. Most of the time, I go by the name Wilworth. Wilworth was a name chosen between myself and my partner.
I got you. So does your name hold when your parents named you, does your name hold some type of significance? Like, is there a reason why they gave you that name?
They have never given me a reason.
Oh,
Probably I've never asked actually.
ah,
I've never asked about it. We don't like make a habit of asking our parents why they give us certain names in Africa generally. It's like rare. It's like they birth you, give you a name, and you just live with it.
no
We
questions asked. You just deal with it.
yeah. We don't ask
Okay.
questions. Just go with the flow.
Okay.
If you don't like it, you find you're either improving it or changing it to something or using another. If you're comfortable with it, you go with it. But most times I choose to use my own because it's a bit unique, so it's not like very common. I would comfortably say it does not attach to any gender, so I love it because it has no identification of female or male. It's just me when I will know.
I love that. Do you still have a relationship with your parents?
Hiccuping one, I would say. With my dad, no. With my mom, once in a while. I would love to have a much closer one, like I did at a much younger age,
Mm,
probably, and before they got to know my sexuality, but that's a bit hard. My mom is a very staunch Christian, so is my dad.
mm,
She's actually a pastor.
mm,
Yeah, so I understand she's protecting her faith, but it's like a struggle having to be someone else for her and someone else for me.
mm.
So we have one, but it's mostly we talk about I'm ill, check on her, I need this. Yeah, but we don't like go as close as talking about what I'm doing with my life, what I'm up to. That's like something that we don't have now.
So basically, your relationship is kind of superficial.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would say that.
yeah. So, what would it take for you to have a better relationship with your parents? Do you think?
I think acceptance. At the end of the day, as children, I cannot wake up and say I chose to be who I am. Like it's something that I grew up and this is who I became to be. I was not groomed because for most people in Africa, actually, they think it's a grooming. We are moving because, or we are who we are because we are being paid by someone, which is unfortunately not true.
Mm,
Like if it were up to me, I would want my parents to just accept that I'm different from all the other kids. I'm actually the only girl in my family. The rest are boys, and I'm the youngest. So it's unfortunate. Probably they had so much they hoped for in me. Probably they thought they would have a son-in-law. Unfortunately, they don't have one. They would rather have a daughter-in-law. It is sad that they want me to be something else, and I'm actually something else.
mm.
So if they chose to accept me, I think I would love that because just as much as we want to be ourselves, we don't want to lose our families.
Mm,
That's for sure. So at the end of the day, I want to be who I am. I want to identify as what I am. I want to be me, but still, I don't want to lose the people I love or grew up knowing. Like, I can't know you for so many years, right? From when I was a child and not be able to know you after I've grown. And you want me to erase like that part of you, which I cannot erase because you're like my first bond, the first person I confided in, the first person I sought protection from. And at the end of the day, we still so attached to our parents, regardless of how far they push us. We still want to be those children and kids for them like they raised us before.
yeah, I know as adults we do still strive for that child and parent relationship, even sometimes to our own detriment, right? With of family not loving and accept. Well, I won't say not loving us, but not accepting us for who we are and who we've grown and to
Yeah.
become. And we still long for that. And I know that sometimes I even long for that. Been thinking about my father a lot lately. I haven't talked to my dad in 10 years since I transitioned, and just still having that, well, I wish I could talk to him, but still having that longing of being a child and wanting their parent. So
Yeah.
how is your relationship with your siblings then, your brothers?
To be honest, I think my brothers are very homophobic. The one that I kind of closely relate with is I wouldn't say is accepting. I would say just compromising. Like Okay, you want to be what you are, as long as you don't say to my face, I have no problem with you. So it's like hiccups. They don't want to know that bit of me, but we are siblings. We grew up together, so that's fine. As long as you don't have to pressure me or tell me this is who you are, I'm okay with you. If we try to have conversations like those, like they end in nothing. It's a conversation where you're trying to want the one brother you're good to go with to at least know that I'm still me. Like it's still it's still your little sister, and it's like, okay, you want to do whatever you want to do with your life, but don't make me a part of it. But I know you're my sister. Like I know you're there. I know you're my sister, but and then of course I would not prefer to be called their sister because I identify as someone else. So I want them in my life because I don't want to lose any touch of the people I grew up with. But also, I don't want them to be in my life or me in theirs. And they don't want to recognize who I am. They just want me to be there. And it's a part that we never have a discussion about. Like every time you try to bring it up, he's like, I'm not ready to talk about this. And I keep asking myself time and again, like, when will you be ready?
When
Yeah.
will be a good time? The present is the best time because unfortunately, life is short. We're not promised tomorrow. So if you can talk
Sure.
about it today, let's do it today. It's kind of sad that it's sad and it's isolating, right? To go through life and not have the people that you love and you grew up with. And it's almost and it's kind of fake because it's like you're talking to a brother, but if you don't really know who I am, you don't know who my partner is, and you don't know the things that bring me joy in my life, we really don't have a relationship, right? You have a relationship with a person that you think you're having a relationship with, but I'm physically here, but I'm not here, right? You're not really getting to know me as a person. So let's talk about like your identity and when did you become aware of who you are now. So you identify as non-binary, and what does that mean for you?
I think right from when I was much younger, I would say my first struggle was with feeling more of a boy than a girl. And I grew up dressing up in boys' clothes, even when I would be in school. And because I was the only girl, they kept letting me dress like that because they thought, okay, it's maybe because they have brothers, so they prefer to dress like that as the boys. And for me, it was always a struggle that every time I would be made to put on a dress, I would feel uncomfortable. I remember getting to secondary school and I'm always struggling, say in a mixed school setting, I'm always struggling and being more attracted to girls than to boys, on the contrary. And I found myself at some point, I remember being sent out of school over a fight with a boy for a girl. But for me, then I was like, okay, maybe it's just a phase. So, but then I was always struggling with myself. I loved writing. I did literature right from when I joined secondary. So most of the times when I would write about myself in the perspective of a boy. Then I started doing a little bit of internet searches of what sexuality is like, what it could be. I remember at some point saying, okay, maybe I'm just a lesbian. I love girls. Maybe that is what I am. But then later, I remember when I finished high school completely, I felt like, okay, now this is who I want to be. Now I'm fully exposed to what sexuality is, what gender identities are. And I'm like, this is who I feel like I am. When I started my very first, I would call it serious relationship, because back then in Uganda, it was like, it is tricky actually to have a relationship and you have a permanent partner. Most of them feel, or most of the girls feel like it's a phase in your life. You're either experimenting or you're being trained at school or something like that. For some of us, it's actually not the case. It's like who we are. We are not experimenting this, that, or the other. It's like, this is how I feel. And so I got to a point in my life where I would start writing. I wrote some poem sometime talking about me being a trans person and wanting someone or people to accept me for being trans. And I always have a struggle in my mind to date of, okay, for me, maybe I don't want to be called a she, but maybe I feel like they will not call me a he with ease. Okay. So for me, I say, okay, then I'm non-binary, because if the world can't call me a he, and I don't want to call myself a she, then I can be an in between there. So at some point, I was hell bent on transitioning, and I remember writing a poem talking about why trans people transition. If you check out my Twitter page, that that poem about why most trans people transition, and for me, it is not an aspect of we want to be boys or the others want to be girls. It's like this is who we are. There's always a conflict between our minds, our bodies, what we look like when we see ourselves in mirrors, versus who we really feel we are, like on the inside. And for me, that is why most of us transition. It is not that we want to be something we are not. It is we want our bodies to like fit who we are on the inside, or what we see when we look at ourselves in the mirror. And for me, I only choose the in between because the world pushes me not to call myself a he or him. They want to call me a she. And I'm saying, okay, you can't call me what I want to be called, then okay, at least I'm worth being called a they or them. But it were up to me and the world would accept who I am, then why not? I would maybe be a he or him, but you continuously push me to the in between. So I choose to be non-binary because of that, because I'm unable to push the world to accept me for who I am. And I don't want to be called what the world wants to call me. So I choose to live with the in between.
I've never heard anybody explain it like that. That's actually kind of interesting. And that's one of the reasons why I asked, what does non-binary identity mean to you, right? Because it means something different to each and each individual, right? And so to me, from my interpretation of what you said, it's like a compromise. You're compromising between what you really want and what society really wants. And so it's like, I can't be, I'm this, but you want to call me this. So I'm just going to stick in the middle. And so with that compromise though, how does that make you feel internally?
I'm always conflicting with my feeling or my feelings or who I see when I look at myself in the mirror. I see a different person. So like I'm constantly living in that struggle. Okay, I really want to be a he, but you're pushing me to the in between. But I'm also asking myself, if at all I became a he, will my mom even have the possibility of looking at me as the person I want her to look at me as? Will she even accept me the least bit she does now? Or I will be like a dead child to them. So it's like a tough struggle, but I keep choosing it because then I'm like, I don't get to lose completely. They don't accept who I am. They don't appreciate who I am. They think it's just a phase for me when I actually know this is who I am and I love who I am. I am not complaining. I'll never regret if I transition, but then I'm like, okay, I still love you, so let me receive the half a loaf. So I'm always struggling with acceptance. Like, will they still even love the little bit that is left? So it's like a constant struggle between myself, what I want, and whether or not I lose the people I love. And of course, whether or not I have people to replace those I love.
That's hard. And so what I want to ask you is like, how does that affect just the compromise within itself? Like, how does that affect your mental health?
Time and again, I find myself asking myself, am I enough for me? Like, when are you enough for yourself? But then sometimes when I'm put in a much harder situation than what I was expecting to be put in, say, either by my partner or by a friend I trusted, then I'm asking myself, do they even recognize who I am?
Mm.
Or they also appreciate or want me to compromise also for them when I'm already compromising for almost the entire world? And there is this one person I feel, should not give me reason to compromise. So I'm always asking myself questions like, am I enough? At some point, I'm struggling with even living within the space I am living in, or living with myself, because I'm still worked up about an unresolved battle within myself of what I want versus what I have. So all the time, when I'm put in a position where I feel I am overwhelmed, trust me, it is like I call it phasing out. Like I zone out and I just want to be in an isolated world. So
Mm.
it's just me, and so I don't have to compromise. So it's always a struggle, even mentally, but also for the people I'm around now. Because most of the time, when we are not accepted by our families, we try to find acceptance elsewhere. And sometimes it's a struggle if the people we are running to for acceptance do not give us what we accept or expect as acceptance as we would expect from our families. So sometimes I struggle. Actually, most of the time. Sometimes the seasons when I just zone out and I'm like, I want to be alone. I don't want to be around anybody because I feel I'm not worth it for anyone. So sometimes I even question. I remember there was a season in my life where life was so hard, and I was questioning whether or not it was worth living. Like, why am I pushing? Why am I struggling? Like, what am I even living for? A friend encouraged me to actually take on some counseling sessions at the time. It helped, but of course, most of the time it's like a phase. Sometimes you're okay, sometimes you're not. Some days, I would say, some days are better than others. Yeah.
And sometimes mental health has those cycles of when you're okay, and then sometimes you're not. Maybe you were triggered by something, or whatever the case may be that gets you in that low point. But I want to tell you, and this is coming from me, that we don't know each other and we live across the world from one another. But I want to tell you that I love you and that you are enough. It's easier said than done, right? But it's like, do not give into the idea of not being enough. You are enough. You deserve to be here. You deserve everything in life that you are supposed to get as a person and an individual. And, I can't tell you not to worry about your family or friends, or your family, I would say, accepting you, because that's very hard to not have the acceptance from your family. Because really, family members, if they don't accept you for who you are, they don't, that's not love, right? The most important thing in this world is you. The most important thing is your peace, your happiness, and your well-being. And if other people in your life is not contributing to that, they don't deserve to be there with you. And that's just the truth, right? And I know that's hard. That's easy. It's easier said than done. But there was a point in my life, and I'm not saying to do this, right? This journey in your life is yours. And I can only give suggestions. I can only share and be transparent about how I rolled in my life. But when I came out years ago, when I was 18, and then as I transitioned over time, right? I transitioned in my early 30s. Hey, I walked away from a lot of people, and I even walked away from my mom and my parents, my dad. I told my dad, as far as I'm concerned, I'll never have to talk to you again in life. And I won't say that was easy. It was hard, but at the end of the day, I chose myself, because we come into this world alone and we die alone. And so you have to choose you. And so I encourage you. I really want to encourage you, because I care about you as a person, as an individual, as somebody that's of importance in this world. And I encourage you to choose you. And that's it. Don't worry about if mom don't want to have you for who you are. All right, mom, I love you, but you're gonna have to answer to that on the other side of this world. But for right now, I'm choosing myself and I'm choosing my peace and my happiness. So I challenge you and encourage you to do that. Choose you. And you will find that at first it's hard. That it's legitimately hard to do that. But you'll find as time goes on, you will collect more peace within yourself because you chose yourself. So I just want to say that and encourage you to choose yourself. Hey, this is Sean Aaron. I'm the founder and executive director of Dem Bois Inc. I am also the host of Dem Bois Podcast. As you may know, Dem Bois provides financial assistance to trans men of color in order for them to obtain gender affirming surgery. We have great news. We're currently looking for volunteers to help support our programs. Our programs include our gender affirming surgery grant program and also our personal care package program. We personally curate packages filled with personal hygiene items. Just to name a few, things like tissue, soap, towels, toothpaste, and toothbrushes. We mail them out to trans men of color across the country who may be in need of help caring for their personal hygiene needs. We are looking for volunteers to help raise funds to support our programs. Also, we're looking for someone locally to the Bay Area to help us put all of the care packages together. If our mission is something that resonates with you and you would like to help support our work, just let us know. You can send an email to hello@dembois.org. That is HELLO at DEMBOIS.org. And we will get back to you with further details. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the next episode. So, you are a human rights defender and you work under the initiative of the Queer Women Leaders in Uganda. You want to tell folks more about the work that you do?
Why I chose to work with Queer Women Leaders is because they were the first queer organization that accepted me, actually. When I came into their space, they didn't really care about whether I identify as a lesbian or bisexual or trans person. It was just, when you want to work with a queer organization, you're welcome aboard. So it was the very first NGO here to welcome me as into the queer space, and from it I got introduced to Uganda's queer community. I always wanted to belong, and I feel they gave me that sense of belonging. Most of what we do, not just for all queer people, is they give mental health. It's I got introduced to it by one of their counselors who helped me with my mental struggle recoveries. They also do a lot of, I think I've participated in their digital security sessions. At first, before I became staff, even when I became staff, I have met so many trans people through them, and and from how we relate, uh, without attaching say labels or saying I'm this, I'm that. Like, it's easier because I don't have to explain. If I meet a trans person like myself, I don't have to explain my sexuality to. It's not like a discussion of who you are. Why are you that? Like, it's, yes, bro. How you doing? How have you been holding up? And it's so that put me in spaces. They introduced me to Ruthra Vega. I remember at some point when I was having struggles with the place where I was staying. I even had to hide in Ruthra's shelter because then it was the safest place for trans people. I had to leave home for a bit because I was having community struggles with neighbors and who I am. One of them was spreading rumors about me, and it was really hard. I had threats from cyclists, motorcyclists, on wanting to check and confirm whether I am a girl or boy. And I said I need to leave this environment for some time. I couldn't go home because, like, I know I'm not welcome, so I impose myself on them. So They introduced me to a space where I could seek accommodation for some time. On multiple occasions, I wrote out to different persons for assistance in order for me to move to a safer place. But as you may already know, times are very tricky in Uganda. Like there's the AHA, the Anti-Homosexuality Act, and every time they try to appeal, the appeal is still rejected. I think yesterday there was another appeal that was rejected, and it's just like a constant struggle. Even living in a shelter today, if I said, okay, it's no longer safe where I am now, let me move to a shelter, the question would be, is the shelter safe? Because most of them are either being raided. It's actually very violent in Uganda to be a queer person. So the team at Queer Women Leaders gave me that acceptance I was always longing for. At least it's one of the spaces I say, this feels like home. But also they gave me reason to start my advocacy. My advocacy journey started with them. They showed and taught me what advocacy looks like. If you cannot advocate, or if people are not speaking loud enough for your own opinions to be voiced or heard, then speak for yourself. Let's hear your voice. So for me, they taught me how to be an advocate. My journey as a human rights defender started with them. I am at a point where I do more of online advocacy because I cannot say I am running, say the organization pages. No, I run a small Twitter space. It's called Out Closeted Africa. Why I called it that? Because it was my first voice as someone out of the closet. So I said, okay, this is what it feels like to be out of a closet. So I said, this would be nice. There is no face attached to it, but at least they get to hear when I speak.
Mm.
And I share stories. There are a number of poems or passages about how I feel about sexuality, about being queer, but there are also discussions about what it feels like to be a queer person living in Uganda, because some days get very hard. Like today, if I'm to walk from my place at home to work, I have to second guess between, okay, how many people are going to ask who I am or what I am? I have to ask myself, okay, if they ask, how do I respond? Do I ignore them? Do I keep walking, or do I fight for who I am, because this is who I am? And sometimes I actually only use an individual motorist to take me to a place. If he's not around, I will not work. You can't get me out of my house space if he's not around, because then when it's him, I'm sure of not complete security, but a particular level of security, because I know the organization can hold him accountable because they already know him. But then if he's not around, I have to ask myself, do I really have to go to work? So sometimes it's insecure, but I love and appreciate the support and space and encouragement I receive from the organization, the spaces they send me to with not just queer people, but trans people like myself. And most of what they do, it's very big on feminism. It's very big on psychosocial support. They're one of, actually, I would say, one of the leading organizations that give psychosocial support to the queer community of Uganda. So it's an amazing space.
I love that. How far is the your job from where you're staying now?
I stay like totally in the outskirts of town, actually. Why? Because when the whole thing started, I had issues with one of my neighbors, and when they wrote me out, I had to run as far away from town as possible.
Mm.
So I'm in the outskirts. I would say from my place to where I work is about 1 hour, 15 minutes, roughly.
Hour 15
But
minutes.
initially it was way shorter.
Mm. That's a long
Yeah,
commute.
yeah.
Yeah, that's so. You mentioned the Anti-Homosexuality Act of 2023. What exactly is that for folks that don't know what that is?
The Anti-Homosexuality Act was a law that was recently passed, actually last year, in Uganda that criminalizes the existence of queer people in Uganda. According to the law, the biggest punishment goes as far as death. Like if I was today, someone said when I was a homosexual, it's either I'm arrested for 20 years and more. And if I'm arrested and then I come out, I'm arrested again, come out, I'm arrested again, then of course I can end up being sentenced to death. A number of organizations have tried to come against the law, request for a nullification of the law, but it has failed. As a matter of fact, today in Uganda, being a queer person, we are literally forced into the closet again. Like you come out and you're like, oh, finally I can breathe. And just because of one law, you're back into the closet. But this time, you're in the closet, you speak behind a closed door, and you're more worried about people even finding out it is you speaking, because we're in a time where they're saying, okay, because from the act when it was just passed, even a landlord giving me a house as a queer person was subjected to being arrested. Even my neighbor knowing that I am and not reporting me to police was subject to being arrested. And so the recent court hearing only said, okay, landlords, you can use your houses the way you want. You can look the other way on that issue. Neighbors, okay, we do not hold you accountable. We can't arrest you. But then at the end of the day, they still say, okay, they are queer. We don't want them in our spaces. They're spoiling our children. And so at the end of the day, by me waking up and telling someone, okay, I am queer, I could end up in prison. If I was beaten while walking on a street today or tomorrow when I'm on my way to work, and I went to police to report that I have been beaten up, the first question they would ask, why were you beaten up? And if I said I was beat because I'm a trans person, before they even explain or ask who beat me, I would be in a cell. That's the most unfortunate part about the law. That today, because of the existence of that law, you cannot be a queer person living in Uganda, and it is even okay for you to mention, I am queer. Because when you do, then you're subject to arrest. When you do, then over and over again, you've been arrested, then you're sentenced to death. It is like that tough. So we are, but every day you're living while looking over your shoulder. And the most unfortunate part is, and this is what most of us keep saying, that it is hard for people to notice that someone is queer, say a lesbian that is feminine represented, not that they are not queer, okay? But it's hard for someone to say, okay, that is a queer person. So we always say, or most of us trans people say, we are the face of homosexuality in Uganda. Because I'm masculine representing, they're going to say, okay, that one is queer. So they have a basis on which to harass me, on which to isolate me, on which to discriminate me, on which to beat me up if the men choose to teach me how to be a man or prove to me that they are more of men than I am. So we are like the face of homosexuality in Uganda. We easily get beaten, not just trans men, but even trans women. Some of us end up being raped, some of us killed, just because people are trying to confirm to us that this is not who you are and want to teach you that we are better people in that body than you are. If you're a trans man, they're telling you, want to show you what being a man looks like. And you find people threatening. Yeah, I remember, I think a month back, one of the cyclists in passing said while I was moving on the street, that person, we need to check them. In Uganda, they say, meaning we need to check and see and dress them and see whether they are male or female. But why would you subject me to that just because of what I dress like, or what I look like, or who I identify like? This is my body. At least give me the decency respect to say I have a right to decide what to do with it. So,
Yeah.
and the law protects the violators rather than us who are being violated.
Do you know offhand how many folks are criminalized or sentenced to death per year in Uganda for being queer?
As from the time the law was passed, I cannot say offhand, but at least before each week ends, you'll find more than 5 trans people have been arrested before each week ends. Say in just 1, 2, 3, 7 days, more than 5 will be arrested, either because you're cross-dressing for the trans women. You can get arrested like you're moving and they arrest you on account that you are spoiling children. But how does me cross-dressing spoil a child?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't really make sense. How does me identifying as a trans person spoil a child? Because if a child is straight, as they say, they will keep straight.
Yes.
And if you're trans, I will keep trans. Like it's not something that we grow into. It is something we struggle with and just make the choice after we've grown and in position to make the choice.
Right. Hey, this is Sean Aaron, the host of Dem Bois Podcast. Are you enjoying the podcast so far? Great. I'm glad that you are. Would you consider donating today to help support the continuation of this podcast? As you know, this podcast aims to serve as a platform to highlight and amplify the voices of trans men of color and share our transition stories. The podcast not only aims to amplify trans men of color voices, but it also raises awareness around our lived experiences. You would like to donate? Where can you donate? Great. I'm glad that you asked. Link in our description will take you directly to Network for Good, whom we've partnered with in order to collect donations for the podcast. Or you can visit our website. On the website, click the donate button, and from there, you are able to donate directly to the podcast. All donations are tax deductible. What does the donations go to? Oh, I'm glad that you asked. Your donation will help to support our production costs. We are working with Jasmine from Pink Lady Productions that brings you this awesome content. And also, we pay our guests an honorarium. Pay our guests an honorarium. Yes, we do. Why? Because as trans men of color, we would like to support and uplift each other and honor the time that's given out to come here and share their stories. So if you love this podcast, share and donate. See you on the next episode. Take care. Being trans is not like a cold. Like I can't cough trans and now you're trans. You know what I mean? Like it's not passed on that way. And I think it is also the ignorance of people, right? And it's the misunderstanding of who trans folks are and our journeys, right? And so this is the main reason, one of the main reasons for the Dem Bois Podcast, is so that we could tell our stories, right? And we tell our struggles, we tell everything about us individually, right? Because none of our journeys are the same. And I'm listening to you, and I'm like, that is a hard life to live, to be in constant fear of just moving around in the street and death. That just seems so harsh, like just death for being a person, for being who I am. And listening to you talk about the act, the Anti-Homosexuality Act, I think my question to you is so here in the US, in certain parts of the US, I live in California, so rights for trans folks, we have more rights here in California than other states within the United States. And there are some folks, there are laws all over the country, legislation that's being passed against queer folks, against trans folks, against folks accessing their hormone therapy and all types of things, right? And so when people think of the US, they think of, oh, we're this magnificent place, right? I mean, I don't know what other people think. I'm just guessing. But as I've even traveled different places in the world, people think that the US, we like looked at as some type of a beacon for some reason. But even with the anti-trans laws here, do you think that there's some type of Western influence in Uganda? So like, is Uganda looking outside to see what other countries are doing to their trans and queer folks, and they say, hey, we're gonna do the same thing? Or do you, you know what I mean, are they acting alone? Or like, but does Uganda have a Western influence when it comes to anti-trans laws?
I will take a two-way feedback.
Okay.
One, it is unfortunate, but it is entirely ignorance. I keep saying that people assume that being a queer person is somewhat imported from the US or somewhere in a European country. That's the unfortunate part. And when most of the people that are anti-homosexuality are speaking, they're speaking and saying this is something that has been trained and groomed into us. And for them, they look at it as Western influence. I would not conclusively say it is influenced or not influenced, but I would say from what people say discussions on televisions, on media, they make us believe that one, the same people that are training us are the same people that are using pastors, using politicians to undeteriorate, like they call it, homosexuality, because they feel like, okay, it was trained by the Western, so it should be untrained by the West, which is very unfortunate, because if someone asked me, were you trained? Have you lived or been raised by any white person? No. I have not been groomed to be who I am. Like, I have not been raised or nurtured by anyone white. Like, I've grown up in an African family with African values, with everything African, with no Western culture. I can't say I have traveled to the West even before, honestly. I have applied for fellowships, yes. I have gone through the first stage or sometimes not, but I've not even been there. Like, I've not. So I feel it is very, very wrong for someone to stand in my face and even make an assumption that I'm being trained or groomed by someone. I remember I had a very serious fight with one of my cousins in that regard, because she made a statement and said, you know what, Wena, if at all you're doing all this for the money, how about we share it?
Oh, wow.
Like, how do you demean me to the point of looking at me as a package of give and take? Like I'm a transaction. You get my personality and belittle me to a give and take package, like it is a buy. You come to a shop and just buy it.
Yeah.
Like, we had a serious argument. I cannot speak to that person because I felt belittled, I felt disrespected. And I asked them one question: are you even educated about the things you're saying, you're just speaking? And sometimes when you listen to people sharing their arguments about whether it is what homosexuality is or who queer people are, you listen to the person and you're asking yourself, does this person know that their child could be a queer person? Have they ever thought that their brother could be a queer person? Have they ever thought that one of their family members could even be a queer person? Or they just speak because they have the liberty to speak? Because most of the people who share their opinions is, you listen to it and you're saying, really? How about you ask me? Like, ask me, I'm here, ask me, instead of making those assumptions. So some people on social media claim it is the anti-homosexuality movements that happened in Uganda. As a matter of fact, just to put you up to speed, last year in Uganda, we had a nationwide movement. Okay, and the movement was initiated, I think, started by the Muslim community, where different Muslims across the country marched against homosexuality. And so many people got violated, so many people lost jobs, so many of us ended up unemployed. I was actually working in a mainstream organization, which I no longer work with today, because, someone comes and says, this person is this. And if your boss is not what would call open-minded, what is the chance that you're going to have a job tomorrow? And for us to lose jobs, if say you're working in what we call mainstream organizations that are not queer-led or queer organizations, is they don't ask questions, even when they fire you without notice. Who are you going to report to that? Why were you fired? Will they even listen to you, or police will first arrest you and even listen to the person who fired you and thank them for firing you? So it is a two-way. Some people make us believe that it is fueled and funded by the Western culture. I don't believe that personally, because as much as they say it is fueled and funded by the Western culture, they also think my existence is initiated by somebody, which is not true.
Yeah.
So if they question me for who I am, how would I believe what they say when they say it is fueled and funded by? So I don't think. I wouldn't say Uganda acted on its own. They are different people, because for us, homophobia, transphobia, biphobia, all of it is just like very political.
Mm.
Very political. And you'll find most people saying a particular political party or a particular political group has not said anything about condemning queer people, and therefore they are in support of. So it is very political, but also so many religious leaders are using it for their personal interests. Because, come on, I come to church, you tell me to love. Okay? You stand on a pulpit and tell me to hate another human. So are we all humans and created by God, as you stated? Or are we humans according to your level of assessment of humanity, which is based on sexuality? So it's a very tricky question. I wouldn't say it is done fueled by this or not.
You know, and even here, a lot of the anti-trans laws are fueled by personal agendas and political agendas, right? It's like, oh, we're gonna get everybody against this little group of people, right? And it's a way to silence people too, and to have people fearful, and it's a way to utilize power, and it's unfortunate. It's just, and it's like, we're human beings. Not one human being in this world is the same. We're not monolithic. We don't come in no cookie cutter form. Like, we all are different shades. We all speak different languages. We all have a different color, a different genre of music we listen to. And like, some are tall, some are short, some are big, some are, it's like, we're all different. We're not meant to all be the same. I wouldn't want you to be like me. I want you to be like you, be happy with being you, and I'm gonna be over here happy being me. What you eat is not gonna make me shit, right? So it's like, you live your life and enjoy your life, and I'm gonna enjoy mine, right? I don't understand why. I just the just to sum it up, I don't understand why people don't mind their own business. Just that.
Yeah. You get to a point where you're trying to tell everyone, you know what? It's like my life. If you feel I'm living it in a way that is not suitable for yours, at least it's not yours.
Yes.
So at least you still win.
Yes. It's not your life.
Yeah.
So I want to know, like, is there any place in Uganda that's safe? So could you be like, I'm gonna go live? I don't know the layout of Uganda, because I've never been there. But is there somewhere you could go that's safe? So say like, oh, let's go buy a home, and or open it up for a group of folks to be safe in a country or in a rural area. Is there any place that if you had the resources, that folks go and to feel safe?
I would say this. Two things. The safest way to live today in Uganda as a queer person, as a trans person, is you're safer not in a group. Why? Because when we're in a group, we draw much more attention than when we are individuals. But also, the safest way to do it, I would say, if each of us, okay, had the resources to say, I can own my own place and another owns their own place and another, then would not have baggage of saying, today the landlord is sending their son to tell me to leave. Tomorrow, the landlord is coming in person without notice. The next day, neighbors are getting my things and throwing them out of the house. It is the short-term solution, okay, would say is having a space where you're the only ones in that space. So under normal circumstances, it would be like a shelter. But today, shelters are like the most raided places. You create a shelter, it's safe the first month, safe the second. After some time, it is unsafe. At some point, most people are being encouraged, you know what? Leave the shelter, move out of the shelter, go back at home a bit until the law ceases. But the law has not ceased. Like, we kept on hoping something is going to change. Maybe after the petition, they will realize, when I is human. They have not realized, they have not even realized I'm when and I'm human. They don't even realize I exist. Like, my existence is I would call it they feel like it is an insult to the government. But we all can't run away from Uganda. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Because then if we all run away, then what are we solving? Our kids will grow up in that same space and they'll still run away. But till when will we keep running? For most queer people, if the safest place is having your own place. In the outskirts, it's reasonably safe as long as you're not moving about. It's reasonably safe. Like, you go there and people don't even know you're there. You're just somewhere in the outskirts. You would enjoy a reasonable amount of safety. And as long as you're not using public means. So that is what pushes most of us to say, okay, I can't afford a car now, but how do I survive? I still need to be able to walk to work or move to work because food is not going to find me home seated. I need to make a living, not just for myself, but also for my partner, for the kids we take care of. We don't stop being caretakers, or we don't stop meeting our basic needs or having family just because we're here. We still have family. We still have to wake up every morning and go and work. We have kids in school. My oldest boy, I adopted him actually. He's called Kevin. He's in senior 4. Like, Kevin needs to be in school. I will not say, Kevin, you know what, because of my sexuality, I can't work, maybe sit at home. The child will never understand that. But why should the world subject them to that kind of case? So on multiple occasions, currently I still live in a space where I'm having so many neighbors stay in the same neighborhood because that is what is affordable to me now. But if I were to choose my version of safety, I would say, okay, if I had a reasonable space where it's just me and my family, maybe my family would enjoy a reasonable level of safety. Would still be in Uganda, would still not be put on a lot of pressure from neighbors, would still not be jumping from one home to another because it's tiring. It's very tiring, but it's also not affordable because every time I'm moving from one home to another, the amount of rent it requires me to settle in another place is much higher as compared to when I stay where I am. But how many people want to associate with me? How do I convince a landlord? Today, if I'm to look out for a place to stay, I don't have to even appear in person. I don't exist. Like, I need to send someone who appears very feminine or very masculine, say if you're fully transitioned, and so they would rent it out to that person and not to me. Yet I'm the resident. Like, it gets that hard and hectic. But anywhere where you're just alone in that premise, say you're in we call it standalone house. You're just the only family there or only group of people there, and it is in the outskirts, is reasonably safe.
So I want to ask you, as we wrap this up, what is something, a message that you would like to pass on to folks that are listening? What is it something that you want them to understand about Uganda and about what's happening in Uganda at this moment for you?
I would say this. Today, living in Uganda is hard as long as you're queer. And it is not hard because of the people living there. It is hard because of the laws that are put in place that do not accept who we are or that criminalize our existence. And time and again, we are constantly struggling about how do I get home safe? How do I leave home safe? How do I protect my family? How do I make people around me appreciate who I am as a person? We are always asking ourselves that question. How do we make them see us? How do I make people see women? And it is hard. And if there is any way, if we're ever given an opportunity to speak for ourselves, for who we are, what we are, who we identify as, the only thing I would tell anybody who asks me who I am is that I'm a human being. I could be a parent, I could be a sister or brother, I could be a cousin, I could be a friend, I could be anything you make me as long as it does not confine me to a particular box that does not have me at the center of it as a priority. I want to be myself. I want to be loved. I want to be accepted. And I want to live in my country peacefully without looking over my shoulder. And time and again, as a human rights defender, every day you wake up in the morning and you're like, okay, I need to be that ray of hope for someone. It's not easy for us, even as human rights defenders. It's actually much harder for someone to stand up for others and say, this is who we are, than someone sitting back and saying, okay, let me see who they say I am. So it's always harder for those at the forefront or the front line, because then we become the faces they're looking for. You become the person someone meets and they're like, these are the people spoiling our children. Like, you have to move past people and everyone is whispering and talking about you, who you are. And none of them ever bothers to say, is this person human? So for those listening, queer people say in Uganda, there is hope. I don't know when we'll ever be accepted. I cannot guarantee that it will be today or tomorrow. But as long as we keep fighting and hoping that things get better, they
Absolutely.
will get better.
Absolutely.
For
Absolutely.
those of us that are listening and those of us that would want to support in any way, we always appreciate it. We may not say it loud enough, that's for sure. We may not be able to come to the cameras and thank everyone, but we appreciate every little support we receive from whoever gives it. And even in times when we are unable to get it because it's not there, we still appreciate God, because at the end of the day, we are still alive. And we are Christians. I don't know who misguides people that being a trans person makes me any less of a Christian. I go to church and pray where I'm accepted. When I'm not accepted, I sit at home and pray, because at the end of the day, growing up in a Christian family, I tell myself, God still hears, because if He did not want me to be who I am, I think He would have created a straight version of me.
Mm.
But this is who He created. And I'm sure God loves us, queer as we are, colored as we are still God's children. And if for anything, He makes sure we keep alive in His own ways. Like, I worry about whether I get home safe, but at the end of the day, God makes sure that I get home safe. Not because I'm worth it, but because He still loves me regardless of who I identify as. So
Mm.
we keep hoping. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, that was beautiful. Absolutely. And visibility equals possibility. And knowing that, struggles are here and they're hard, but there's always movement, and there's always change. There's always room to grow, and there's always room for change. And I'd love to highlight Uganda, because I have faith that things will change. And just like you said, we don't know when, but if we keep vocalizing and speaking up against systems, things will change. So this is the part of the show where I like to ask my guests a random question. I have a list of questions that's continuously growing. I'm at 40 questions now. So I'm going to ask you to pick a number between 1 and 40. The question may or may not have anything to do with what we talked about, but it's a way to get folks that are listening to know a little bit something different about you. So go ahead and give me a number and I'll read you that question.
29.
29 says, what is one thing you consider a bad habit that you still do or once did? Do you still do it, or have you stopped doing it?
Sometimes when I'm stressed, like very stressed, I think I drink to tell myself it's okay. So I drink myself to sleep. I still do it. I know it's bad because drinking does not take away the problem, actually.
When you go for a drink, what do you like to drink?
Mostly gins or whiskeys. Am I good?
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, maybe one day we'll meet face to face, and either on this side of the world or on your side of the world, and we have a drink together to celebrate change, and that there's change brewing. So we have reached the end of this episode. I want to say thank you for listening to Dem Bois Podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Sean Aaron, he, him, his. Be sure to visit our website at dembois.org. That is DEMBOIS.org. If you would like to connect with us, be sure to follow us on Instagram or Facebook. If you think you would be a great guest on the show, or if you know somebody you think would be a great guest on the show, there's multiple ways to request to be a guest on the show. First is you can go visit our Instagram page, click the link in our bio, and from there you'll be able to request to be a guest on the show. Or you can visit our website, click the programs tab up top, scroll down to podcast, click the podcast button, and from there on the podcast page, you'll be able to request to be a guest on the show. Yo, we need questions, y'all. If you have those burning questions, a question that you want to ask me or a future guest on the show, there's multiple ways that you can send in questions, right? So first, you can go to Instagram, DM us that question, or you can email us at hello@dembois.org. That's HELLO, like hi, at dembois.org. Be sure to like the show. Be sure to share this show out with your friends and other folks in your networks. So until next time, take care.